Okay. Okay, let's see if this stream works this time. Aha! There we go. Streaming live. I'm really hoping people caught you saying Daddy Naked Bug. That would be pretty awesome. Oh, nice. Fantastic. Let me tweet out this link. How's the actual video this time? Right, no, I just had to put it on mute. Yep, I'm going to share this on Twitter, on Reddit, and then I'm going to go get a drink, so we'll be starting pretty soon. So you guys can be entertained by these idiots' antics. Bold. Did they mean me? Did they think I was Mike? I am pushing. Am I not talking? Can you guys hear me? Say two. I can hear you. All right, I'm off to get a drink. You guys enjoy their antics, and please share this on Twitter or Reddit or Facebook or wherever you go for fancy stuff. So, BRB. Hello, hello. Can you all hear me?
They can't hear us too.
Oh, wow.
How about now?
Damn, Patrick. Oh, so Patrick heard me say damn, Patrick?
Okay, so that's what it was.
That's a reply to Reid.
Yes, they said this. They can hear you guys now. So what happened, for the few of you who joined about an hour ago and saw me live streaming Star Wars The Old Republic as I was testing some video settings, which seemed to have worked, I might add, I turned off desktop audio because there was some sort of weird echo that we were getting, and when I restarted OBS Studio, it was still turned off. So apparently that's what's capturing these guys here. I'm just happy that the video is actually working and it's a little bit better than what it was before.
Yeah. Looks like the video is pretty good.
And I got a drink.
Alright, I gotta fix this so I'm not looking down. People don't need to see that much above my bald head.
It's called a hat.
So now that people should be able to hear us, what's everybody drinking tonight?
The hard-hitting questions from Blayne, right there.
I am drinking an Abita Subtle Golden, or I think it's Golden Ale Subtlety. It's like a tea flavor, kind of Arnold Palmer beer. Not too bad.
I just had straight-up unsweet tea.
Sweet tea.
So,
Southern state or not?
sometimes.
We are a border state.
Yankee.
Yep.
I've told the story of I don't know if maybe I have, when my wife and I were on a honeymoon. We were in Dallas, and it was the first time I saw one of those Best Buy kiosks, and I looked and I was like, what are these Yankees gonna think of next? And I swear someone looked at me like, what the hell?
Yeah, at least my town would probably, I guess, be a Yankee. I'm sure some of the other places would identify more with the South, but there is a Supreme Court case dealing with the college in my town that's related to segregation, so I guess that makes us pretty northern.
Yeah. Patrick's got the stuff I want to try. I'm just here with Jameson tonight.
Nothing wrong with that. I heard we had someone from Canada with us tonight.
We've got 2 Canadians, I think.
2 Canadians. I know we've had, Eric. Isn't Eric Canadian?
I saw Eric and Chris.
Nice. Welcome.
One of them's from Montreal. Yeah, Eric is from Montreal, and then Chris was also from Canada.
And Thomas, there we go. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I am excited that the video is working. It only took us 3 tries, so I guess third try really is a charm. I'm really pleased that we were able to get this setup working because I like this 3 window thing that we have going on, a little bit bigger than we had with YouTube, and I don't think that some of the other options were going to give us that ability. So I like this. I like this setup. Hashtag Blayne out. So I'm glad it's working, and I'm excited that we can go forward with our show, and we can start inviting some guests back on and wait for Blayne to come back so that we can actually have a good product to have them, though we may need to push to talk.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was closing the door. Lily's gone for now.
Aw, sad.
You're fine. I'm just getting up the rundown.
All right, so the TFC people are banning out Pecky in, I assume? Is that the going sentiment up north? I mean, he's already got the sweater, so definitely right for...
Chris, no, you can't have my coat. There's a Peter Vermes in up there from TFC.
Oh.
I don't feel like that would happen.
Maybe he just means him as GM. Oh no, they have the Red Bulls old guy as GM, right? Pano out. Yeah, how does that not happen already? How is Pano still having? How did Pano get fired? Outlast Wilmer Cabrera.
Yeah, I don't know on that one.
Connor Casey, Coach of the Year. Clearly.
Ali Curtis has been trash. Well, I mean, Ali Curtis hasn't had much time there, to be honest. I mean, Pozuelo was a good sign. Yeah, I mean, but Pachenko is pretty good. Although he hasn't been doing too well in Columbus this year either. So it's not like Petke, Hudson, and Cabrera in a ladder match for the next expansion.
Oh, that's not even fair. Petke wins that hands down.
All right, here we go. We're going to get this thing started. Thanks so much for everyone here on live chat with us tonight. If you haven't already, please do share the link out on YouTube so we can try to get more people encouraged to come on out and listen. Be sure to let them know that we're answering questions and doing all that kind of good, important stuff. Good old fun. As I said during the Star Wars stream, half helpful advice and half fun, and maybe have something else, even though that ruins the math, but I'm sure you could come up with something else that we're half doing, maybe half pronouncing names correctly. So this is live. We're going to get started with our episode for round 25, so we can get that sound ripped for our SoundCloud podcast. So here we go. Be sure to get prepped your round scores, because I'm going to ask for that, and so I hope people know you're using Common Core math. Ooh, no thanks. Get your scores prepped, because I'm going to ask for that when we're doing the intro, so we can rattle those off, and then get your questions prepped as well, because I want to get you, sorry, not your questions with Blayne, you guys know what that is, but I want your fantasy takeaways and most surprising moments so that we can interact during the first part of the show. So a lot of you guys are old hat and gals are old hat, you know what's going on, so here we go. Hello, fantasy managers, and welcome to the round 25 preview episode of the
Reid,
MLS.
quick to talk.
Oh, dang it! I did that last week. I get all ready, and I'm like, all right, hands together, look up at the camera, kind of don't look at and I just forget to hit the button. All right, take two. Hello, fantasy managers, and welcome to the round 25 preview episode of the MLS Fantasy Insider. This episode is brought to you by the MLS Fantasy Insider logo, certified non-political for your stadium banner needs. Well, yes, but no, actually brought to you by MLSFantasyBoss.com and the amazing subreddit community of r/FantasyMLS. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partners in fantasy, Michael Denton and Blayne Riffle, our resident MLS Fantasy Idiots. How are you guys doing tonight?
Idiotic as always.
Yeah, well, we had to throw that out there. I don't know if those of you listening or who have joined us in live chat have gotten the opportunity to listen to the latest episode of Extra Time, and it's really hard for me not to say Extra Time Radio. The latest episode of Extra Time when some radio jockeys down in Atlanta called out some, I guess we decided it was Weeby and
It was Weeby and Bobby. I'm pretty sure they were mad about instant replay. That's what I could figure out.
So yeah, they got called out. Called them the pundits, the league idiot pundits. So we had to work that in. That may not be the only time that we work fantasy idiots into the show this week, but very funny, very amusing to see that happen. And I loved just to watch Matt Doyle when that was happening. So. Fun times.
I gotta watch the video. I was listening to it on the call.
Oh yeah, the video. That's where it's all at. As you all now know, who are joining us live, we have our streaming working. So for those of you listening on SoundCloud or iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast, we are live streaming our show every Monday night around 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, and third time's a charm since YouTube changed how streaming worked through them, and our video seems to be working pretty well now, so we have audio and video that's not super choppy. So I encourage you sometime, if you can, please join us in live chat. We've got a fun group of people who come regularly to interact with us. It's a great opportunity to ask your questions when they're most important to you on these Monday nights, which is very important as we round out this season, as we have a lot of Wednesday double game week starts. So let's just jump right into it, because that's what you guys are here for, fantasy. Let's talk about how you did in round 24 and some of our most surprising moments and takeaways. So Mike, let's start with you, with how your team did, and then everyone over in live chat, start posting your scores so we can mention those in just a second.
So I am the king of the fantasy idiots this week. I got 129. Not captaining Zlatan, terrible idea. I had Steres, who got a red card, so that helped out. My best, and by best I mean absolutely worst, I don't know why I'm still on this podcast, I probably should be kicked off, is I checked LA Galaxy's lineup to make sure that F. Alvarez was starting, and saw Alvarez and was like, cool, he's starting, totally forgetting there were 2 Alvarezes on LA Galaxy. So I had a player with 2 points total for this double game week. So yeah, nothing went right this week. Other than like Minnesota defenders doing pretty well. Barrios was okay, but wasn't worth the budget savings to not have Nani, who had a really great week. So pretty disappointing week overall. Arriaga for Seattle was a total dud. Bunch of duds on my team, so yeah.
Blayne, what about you?
I got a 158 this week and moved up quite a bit again. I actually went with some of what the chat was talking about last week, and I brought in Blanco, which was a weak point in my team. But I know somebody mentioned it, I can't remember who, it may have been Ryan, about Gregus and asking about him, and I actually brought Gregus in for a full 19 on that one, so that helped a lot. Ladero got the 12, Valeri got the 12. I captained Zlatan like I called out last week. I was like, go with the forward. I know you guys were both on Valeri and saying you were different than me, but Zlatan on a double game week, got to go with it. And so that gave me the 158. I'm not going to complain too much because I'm back up at 229 overall.
Yeah, that 158 was enough to help in the head-to-heads as well, I must say. But we'll get to that in a second. As for me, it's really awkward to have to stop pressing this push-to-talk key still. I did not get caught in that same trap as Mike. I did have Steres at first, but switched him to Fletcher near the end, and so I was able to get 11 points there. I was also very happy with the Minnesota defensive results. They've been doing well the past several games in general. So I had Manone in defense, and I had Mettenair as another defender. Wish I had more, but I went with Kyoto on the front. And that was fine, too. He got 12 points, came off my bench. I also had Johnny Russell on my bench, who came in with 8 points. Low points for me, Savarino did not do anywhere as well as I would have hoped for someone with an 11 million price tag with 5 points there. Expected a little bit more out of RSL. If you were with us last week on the show, during live chat, or even listening to us, we had some people in chat, and forgive me, I can't remember the specific name. We were talking about Johnson over at RSL, and he did really well. So congrats for that tip. Almost had me convinced to make it a switcheroo, but I was still very pleased with Kyoto as well. Had Brian Fernandez, had Zlatan on my forwards, so happy with my forwards. But Pavone didn't do as much for me. I was hoping for a bit more than 10 with his double game week, and then Valeria as my captain, only 24 points. So just a mixed bag. I had a solid 139, which I think was about average for most of the people in the top third of the fantasy players right now, the people who are still really competing. I think that was pretty average, just a few little missteps, and the captain is, of course, so essential each week, so not too bad. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say this was a big differential week. There was a lot of, because, I was like 129, you were at 130, but we also had people like, we'll talk about Jay's score in a bit, a lot of, 150s.
For sure.
I see a bunch of great scores in the chat, but it's kind of all over the place, 170, 169.
Yeah, we got Chris. Chris has 133. Then we got down here Joel with 154. Ryan 167. Hey, Ryan Skiles. He's one of our Patreon. Welcome, man. Patrick 157. Got a 143. Scrolling down. Let's see here. Thomas 157. Again, Matt S 179. Jojo 169. Yeah, 171 from Chris. Very nice. 42nd overall. Well done. Let's see here. Anything else we got here? Which Ryan Anderson? That's right. We've got like a.
Got two.
We've got two Ryan Andersons who jump in here sometimes and get everything messed up. So we're gonna need to have get one of those like captcha bots or something to prove who's what. Yeah, I see a lot of 160s, 140s. Very solid scores. So you guys did awesome. Baird was also a great switcheroo. We'll get to that in just a second. So let's move on to how our hosts head-to-head league did and our Patreon league. So the first game head-to-head, there are actually only two games for us to mention this week because we had an MLS Fantasy Insider Derby going on. But first, Mike went head-to-head against Bobby Warshaw. And even though Bobby Warshaw may be accused sometimes of being an idiot for his punditry, this week he did do well enough to beat Mike 129 to 143. So still pretty close. However, he would have also beaten me, but that honor went to Blayne this week in our MLS Fantasy Insider Derby. Blayne topped me 158 to 139, and I was so hoping for this last game because I think I had 139 or 130. It was like 1 or 2 points difference going into the last game when Blayne and I were getting the last few games, and I was like, oh, I might be able to pull this out, and I did not. Portland did not have very good results. Mike already teased it, though. The top honors this week go to Jason Wiskovich, our MLS Fantasy Insider host emeritus, who topped everybody with a score of 179. I think he was in the top 15, might have been 14th overall for the top score this week. So very good score from Jason. And then Sherry is still on top of the hosts Invitational League with a record of 9-0-0, and she has extended her lead, giving some padding right there over her next 5 chasers who all have 2 losses. So Sherry can definitely take a game and have a little slip up near the end. But yeah, she's doing amazing. I'm looking forward to getting her on the show. Going to our Patreon real quick, we have HG who extended his lead to 8-0-0, and it's pretty close with Patreon, though. We've got several people right there on HG's toe. So amazing results, amazing scores. You guys are doing fantastic. Now let's start talking about surprising moments and fantasy takeaways. I'm going to talk to Mike and Blayne right now. If you're in chat, please start posting your most surprising moments and your fantasy takeaways for round 24. Blayne, let's start with you.
So I've got 3 this week, and they're all scoreline based. Philadelphia getting blanked at Chicago. They seem to be in a down skid. I expected a little bit more from them. Thankfully, I didn't go in with them on fantasy, but that one really threw me for a loop. DC failing to score against Vancouver is also a surprise. I know that's one where, if you're looking at road players, that's one I was kind of, maybe this will help, maybe this will get them back on the right track. And then Portland getting shut out at home. I mean, Portland doesn't lose at home very often, and Atlanta going in there and taking a 2-0 win on the road. I mean, that speaks volumes about both teams, really. I think Atlanta's definitely on the uptick right now. They had that slow start, and they're coming around, but Portland getting blanked at home like that is really worrisome going forward.
Well, Portland's had real issues at home. I'm just not sure if maybe it's because their style is harder to do at home, because when you have the full Timbers Army in front of you, or behind you, I guess, trying to egg you on, it's harder to kind of sit back and absorb and counter. And we kind of saw that, especially in this game, because Atlanta got the early goal, and so Portland kind of got away from it, from what I could tell. And that's just not, you don't want to be chasing the game against Atlanta. They'll just burn you on the counter. Miles Robinson had a great game, and offensively, Atlanta is definitely clicking right now with a string of really good results. For me, the surprise of the round, Blayne mentioned a bunch of them, but I'm going to throw in San Jose losing to Sporting Kansas City. San Jose is a team that's chasing a playoff. They really shouldn't be losing to Sporting Kansas City right now. That's a bad one. The other big surprise for me was the kind of craziness in the FC Cincinnati New York City game, the other MLSFI Derby this year. So I was actually at a school function with my wife, getting messages. It was like, penalty awarded, penalty missed, penalty awarded, penalty missed. It's not too often you have 2 penalty misses in the same game, but definitely kind of a weird and wacky game. I mean, it ended up being the scoreline we all expected, but Still a weird one for the second edition of the MLSFI Derby.
And I was also keeping up with that game through text alerts, but not because I was at a school function, because of Flow. Sorry. So for myself, I don't like that Flow FC has the streaming. It's not fun for me. So for myself,
Flow is the worst.
I've also got Portland's poor week. Really hope for a little bit more out of them that second round. I know Atlanta's been firing on a lot of cylinders. I don't know if I'll say all, but they've been doing very well on a good run of form, especially Martinez. Credit to that. But that cross-country trip to Portland, with how Portland usually is at home, I did question that. Was hoping for some more points. Did not happen. That was definitely a big surprise. Sam Johnson and Corey Baird, mentioned both of those players last week. I was more on the Corey Baird train, just for some of his more recent form, because Sam Johnson had been injured. He came back. Both of them got a goal. Both of them are super cheap, so pleasantly surprised. Props out to that for RSL, but the second game they didn't do well, so definitely was having them on the bench was the best place for them to be. And then I'm going to add Nemanja Nikolic to the scores. I was going through some of the recaps of these past rounds to see what I may have missed, and I did not watch the Chicago game. Nikolic is 5 goals in his last 4 games, so he is giving that goal-scoring performance to Chicago that we were all promised 2 years ago. So, but that's just something to keep an eye on. It was surprising going into these final rounds if Chicago can get something going. A lot of their players are cheaper because they've been struggling for so long.
Yeah, and Nikolic is one of those streaky players, so he's definitely one to watch if he's getting hot. He's had goal-scoring opportunities all year. And if you've been reading, I mean, it's pretty much thrown the expected goals thing out the window because he's just been fluffing chances. If he starts getting in a run of form, he could very easily be one of the top scorers on a week-to-week basis in the game. So keep an eye on that one.
Going to our live chat, we have several people, Matt and some of our resident Canadians here, who have mentioned both Montreal and Toronto, specifically Montreal coming back and getting those points up there against, let's see, who did they go against? Dallas last week?
Yeah.
Going against Dallas, and it was Lassi Lapalainen who was a big part in that. I know we mentioned him a couple of weeks ago when he debuted and did well. He's not been every round, but that's one of my takeaways is just keep an eye on Lassi Lapalainen. He's a great differential when Montreal is in play. Maybe better with double game weeks, but if you need somebody cheap, he's been doing pretty well there. That was crazy. And then also Toronto getting that draw with their game. So just interesting things going on in Canada. Would you guys agree?
Yeah. Wayne Rooney shouting at the fourth official. That was fun too.
That was fun. There was lots of crazy stuff going on right there. So yeah, Montreal blew the 3-0 lead, and it was pretty wild. Credit though to FC Dallas for being able to come back. That's a team you're going to want to look at. So fantasy. Let's move right into our fantasy takeaways. If you're in chat, some of the important takeaways that maybe you guys noticed that you want us to comment on or you want to share. Dallas is one of those teams that's got to get some results. We're very quickly approaching that time of year where LAFC's already made the playoffs. So short aside, this is one of the reasons why I like the playoffs, because here we are, round 25. We could have 6 more rounds left of fantasy, and if this was the Premier League or any other league, pretty much, it would be like, well, LA's won. That's it.
Yep.
Whatever. And I get the system. For those of you who are English fans and other leagues who watch us, thank you so much for tuning in. But it's just part of my American sports culture, possibly Canadian sports culture. I don't know how much with playoffs and stuff you guys do, but I imagine just North American, we'll do it that way. This North American sports. There we go. So I don't do a lot. So the Canadian American sports culture, I like playoffs. I like that I can say, well, you know what, LA's in, that's fine, but someone like a Philadelphia or a Montreal or a Minnesota or somebody, Seattle, could still come in and do some stuff. Random rant right there to say this is the time of season when we're getting near the end. the bubble is coming in, the red line's coming in, teams are going to have to be going for points. And so you have to consider that when you're making your fantasy trades. Some of those teams will start to slack off. We might see more of the young kids playing. Some of those teams, like LAFC, are playing for records and playing for prestige. And they may, while there could be some rotations, players like Vela still want to pad their lead and want to make history and get their name in the record books. So it's going to be interesting, and there are going to be considerations that we'll try to talk more about as we're winding down to the season. So I've lost my train of thought with that random aside. So we're talking fantasy takeaways. We started with Blayne last time, right? So Mike, what about you?
I've got two. One is kind of off of what we were just talking about, the playoffs. The playoff race is still really, really tight. I mean, really, there's only about 3 teams that are like truly eliminated, maybe one more. The teams eliminated: Vancouver, Colorado, and Cincinnati. Maybe you can throw in Columbus, depending on how you feel about them. Even Houston, who just fired its coach, they're not totally out of it, but I mean, obviously, that's a different situation. Coach. But everyone else is still pretty much in it, still fighting for a lot of seeding, fighting for a home game in the playoffs. For that first round, most of those teams could go from anywhere from having a bye or at least hosting a home game to being out of the playoffs completely. So I think a lot of teams are going to have to go for it. There's conversation on Extra Time about San Jose's dip in form being because teams are now having to bring it 110%. You're not able to slack off anymore because you desperately need all the points. So I think we're going to be seeing that a lot in this next few months until we see some kind of shuffling where teams can actually take a break. The other takeaway I have is Seattle's in real trouble. Our good friend Ashley Savage wrote a whole article talking about it. The loss of Chad Marshall has really hurt them. They're not a team you want to target defensively anymore. Conceding 2 goals against a 10-man LA Galaxy is really bad. And then they were really lucky to get that result. They deserved a loss. They were totally dead in the water against Real Salt Lake, and that was before the altitude got to them. They were just pretty much outplayed and lucky to lose only 2-0. I think they lost 2-0. Maybe it was 3-0 at the end. But they're a team where they're just struggling all up and down. Ladera only had 12 points this week. That's a pretty low score for a double game week for him. So definitely a team I think to avoid going forward unless there are some changes in transfer windows closed, and it doesn't sound like from reading Ashley's article, which I recommend to go check out on MLSFI.com. It doesn't sound like that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I even felt safe not having him on my team this past week, which I know I saw a lot of teams with Ladero, and people were talking about if he was one of the must-have players. So yeah, for sure. Did I cut you off, Mike, or do you have some more?
Nope.
Okay, Blayne.
Yeah, I want to echo what Mike said about the playoff race. Only one team has locked up a playoff spot, and that is the LAFC, and no team is mathematically eliminated yet. I mean, realistically, a few people are gone, or a few teams are gone, but mathematically they're not done yet. So that's huge. Means every team's going to be putting it all out on the line here. They're, like Mike said, everybody's playing for positioning right now, and some teams are getting hot towards the end that may make a playoff run, so don't count anybody out. That said, fantasy takeaways, I didn't have as much this week. I mean, I can reiterate what some people said in chat to me last week was Orlando's defense is better than they look. Better than we've seen them in multiple years. So yeah, they held Minnesota to one goal on the road, which is a pretty good task for them. And then just overall, just keep an eye on the playoff races and watch for those teams really putting it all out there on the line right now.
I think it's a combination of both with that Minnesota-Orlando game, is that Minnesota is struggling a little bit with some of its attack, but yeah, for sure. I know I was mentioning last week about Orlando's away defense being better than people tend to give it credit for. So I think that's a great little combination to take away from there. For myself, I'm going to add in and mention some of the good takeaways people have suggested in chat they want to hear us talk about. Colorado has been experimenting around with a little bit of a man-marking system. They definitely did it their last 2 games. Of this, I've not been paying attention to see if they've done it anymore, but it was brought to my attention this double game week. Helped them a little bit. They got a draw, and then they didn't lose very badly. this week, so they didn't get the victories. But it just makes me wonder, fantasy-wise, if we start seeing some of these teams move to man mark, it's definitely going to make some of those defensive players more valuable, some of the defensive midfielders more valuable, and it really might be a system that's going to impact the offensive power of our offensive teams a lot. So knowing which teams are playing the man mark could really be beneficial fantasy moving forward, which is not the many, just Colorado and San Jose, maybe Colorado question mark. But that was interesting for me. Some of the things that have been mentioned from chat, Pedro Santos has been filling in well for Higuain. I have to agree. I saw him live at the first Hell is Real Derby, and he is definitely doing some good things. Had a screamer of a goal right there. But yeah, he's been filling in well for Higuain. Has been doing well with fantasy points as well. See, we had a Brian Fernandez one as well. Let me find that real quick. There we go. Christian mentions that one of his takeaways is that Brian Fernandez is only worth the gamble if both games are home, which I think that's pretty bold. Fernandez definitely has the skill and potential to do very well. He did very well when he came in, but coming off that little bit of a knock that he had, I do think that definitely played into it. And just that weird result here with Portland, I think it's fair to say that maybe he's not a lock on a double game week, but I think he's definitely one to still consider. Mike?
Well, I mean, he's had some injury issues when it comes in, but I mean, I don't know that I would say. I mean, I think he's like pretty much every other starter, which is that you're going to want to have if he starts the 2 games, but I don't think they have to be at home. I mean, if he's starting on the road, I think he's a pretty viable option because, I mean, actually, I think that kind of helps Portland's system because they want to kind of sit back and absorb and then hit on the counter. So I don't think that he has to be at home. In fact, I'm trying to pull up his numbers now. I think his numbers are actually probably lower at him, if anything. Yeah, like he's gotten 11 at the road at Seattle, 12 at the road at Philadelphia. I mean, he's a striker, so his numbers can kind of go up and down, but I don't think it's wedded to home or away for him. Like, I mean, his last 2 home games, 14 against Chicago Fire, and then 2 against Atlanta. So I don't think that home or away is a determining factor. He's not like Rusnak last.
I like this comment from Shannon, who mentions that New England's had some crazy, or Turner's had some crazy saves for New England. They've been in a little bit of a rut. They haven't been really going as hard or not getting as big results over these past few games. Turner did have some good results. Teton over there with Cincinnati had some good results as well with that PK save that we saw. And you're definitely right, this is a double game week coming up. If it wasn't a double game week, players like that would likely be good on your bench to help you with some value gains. It's also late in the season, but good to point out. I mean, not Cincinnati, they're done, but if New England can get some stuff going, if they have some good defensive form coming in, definitely one to look at right there. Let's see here what else. Blayne's eating an Oreo brought to him by Lily. Oreo, please sponsor us.
Please.
We could do that. Extra time brought to you by, Cheez-It, and then we could be MLSFI brought to you by Oreo. That could work. Yep. Let's see here. Any other comments from chat? A lot of chats about Oreos. Well, I'll let you all keep talking about Oreos in chat, and we're going to move on to our housekeeping for round 25. So this is our Patreon housekeeping section. Patrons, you guys are so awesome. As you saw me have the swag a couple weeks ago, I'm going to start getting the I've got some new shipping packages ordered. I'm trying to get some of the little cellophane bags. I think that'll be easier to ship than the flat rate boxes that I've had before, so I'm going to get that stuff out. So look forward to start sending out some items soon. And then had some trouble with the shipping for the spring Fantasy League winners. A couple of the items accidentally got sent to my house, which I don't know how that happened because I was trying to be very, very careful about making sure they got sent, but I think in between getting the payment set up, some of the addresses might have accidentally gotten changed. So if you haven't gotten your spring prize from me yet, it's because it's probably on my porch. So, well, it's actually in my kitchen. So I'll be getting those out to you as well. Let's get into the housekeeping, though. Wednesday, August 21st is the beginning of this double game week. A lot of double game weeks coming up, everybody, as we finish this up. This one is starting at 7 o'clock p.m., and it's with New York City FC versus Columbus. So keep an eye on that. It'd be an interesting game.
rivalry.
Massive rivalry. Maybe that's the second game you're thinking of, actually. But what I am wondering that, Mike, I think you probably already had the answer to this question, so just prep it for our next section is about potential rotations for this game after having the easier game against FC Cincinnati, but with their real New York Derby coming up right then. So that's the question I definitely want to talk about later on. The rest of the teams, of course, New York City FC, double home game. Columbus with a double away game. We have DC United, New York Red Bulls with a double away game. LAFC with a double home game. And then San Jose. Those are your 6 teams on a double this week. Nobody's on a bye. Everybody is in play. And that means if you're looking for some switcheroo options, I won't do budget starters just yet. We'll do that in the next section as well. But if you're just looking for some switcheroo bench fodder, I recommend looking at LA Galaxy first because they've got the last game of the round. And then take a look at Houston and Dallas. Between those 3 teams, you should be able to find 4.0 players who aren't going to play to be able to cover all the positions that you are going to have on your bench or potentially in your field for the switcheroo or auto options. So, all of that said, let's throw it over to Mike for the injury report.
All right. One thing before we get into the injury report, we may have possibly the last time, is our alert on random friendlies with Mexican teams in midweek. That honor this week goes to the LA Galaxy, who are playing on Tuesday against Club America, I think. Or maybe it's Tigres. I don't remember who they're playing. Anyway, they're playing in Houston on Tuesday night, and Zlatan and Pavon. Pavon or Pavon?
I've been saying Pavone, but
I'll go with Pavone because I'm gauging. So Pavone, Galaxy, they were added to the roster late. I'm not sure if if MLS just made them do that because they're mad at the Galaxy for resting all of their stars. But whatever, that's a lineup you're going to want to check out, obviously, because LA Galaxy versus LAFC is the second part of that big double game week. And I know we're all going to have 3 LAFC players on our team. So check out for that. Make sure there's no injuries from that. Otherwise, the only big injury I know this week was James Sands, who got a broken collarbone, 6 to 8 weeks out. Other than that, it's a whole bunch of red cards, which I wrote down. Zimmerman, Gaitan, Steres, and Herrera were the big red cards. And there were also a bunch of red cards midweek. I don't know if Disco will add on to that, but if they got a midweek red card, it should be done. Disco adds on. So follow MLS injury news for that update. Yellow card warnings, we do have a bunch. Tati Castellanos, Chanot, Ring, Kay, Duncan, Parker, Ariola, and Canus are from the double game week teams. Those are all the guys on warning from what I can tell. I'm not sure if anyone will be added on. I'll try to check and update that later in the week. So that's the injury situation going into this double game.
We have 2 clarifications from chat for us. We have Patrick, who is letting us know that Cruz Azul is who LA Galaxy is playing. And then Shannon says, yes, it is Pavone. Sounds like own. So that may be a first of when we actually got the pronunciation right on our first guess.
I got Abear right, which most announcers are still getting wrong.
But like he's from your team, so like I feel like that's like you should get
but
most
I got
of the
it
players.
before.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm a Cajun, and everyone, like half the people around here are named.
But that's
Bobby Abear is a famous Saints quarterback, so that's all
there we
Cajun New Orleans stuff. That's nothing to do.
But that's why the whole the plane got you confused, though.
Yeah, that's that. His name is wrong.
That's just wrong. Yeah, that's really good.
I mean, when he learns how to pronounce his name correctly, then he can come back and apologize. That's it.
Yeah, I used to work retail, and I had someone come in one time and tell me what their name was, and I looked down at the note that I had, and I thought the same thing. Like that's not right. That's not your name. Okay, enough of that random aside. Let's move on to our ESPN Plus Round 25 preview. If you are in chat, start thinking about the questions that you have for this round. If you can, please time them with the section that we're talking about, keepers, defenders, all that kind of stuff. But I want to start seeing those questions as we come through. Think of them because, as with every week, I ask the questions that Mike and Blayne forget about every week, and it is, what are your best or the best or multiples, your best match for fantasy points, and do you have any players who are a hard pass right now? Let's start with you, Blayne.
Match for fantasy points. That's a good question this week. I actually did look at this, and then I saw one that made me do a double take. I actually kind of like the New York Derby at the second game. I think they could be wide open there. Red Bulls are on a little bit of an upswing right now. I think this one just could be a wide open game with lots of goals.
Mike?
Yeah, I think that's probably true, but I'm gonna pick El Trafico. I think we've seen that be a goal fest in years past, and I don't expect that to change, especially Zlatan coming off of a good week. We know he'll care about this game, so I just expect a ton of goals and real feisty action, maybe a few red cards. That's kind of the game I'm literally looking at.
And then any players that are a hard pass. There we go. Got that out for you, Mike.
No, I think pretty much all of them. I mean, maybe like Areola for DC United, Lucho Acosta. I mean, DC's struggling, so that's kind of my only concern. I wouldn't go too much DC offenders, although I think you could go with Wayne Rooney. I mean, spoiler alert, I'm not, but I think that's really DC midfielders is probably the only hard passes for me this week.
Blayne?
Probably say Columbus and Red Bull defenders. I mean, 2 road games each. Just don't even keep those guys on your radar. Just look at somebody who's got a home game.
Then I'll throw in a third question because it is a double game week, so we'll make this. I know someone's going to be thinking about this. Are there any single game week players who are on your radar right now? Either of you?
No. You have 2 teams on a double game week with 2 home games, and they're the top 2 in points per game in the league. So I mean, you've got 6 players pretty much from those 2 teams, I think. So I think you can fill out with enough good quality players from the other 4 teams to fill it out. So plus it's a rivalry week, so it's weird things happen all across the league. So I think you're much better off taking the double game weeks and taking your 2 shots.
Blayne?
Yeah, the only single game week players I can bring up a little later, they're switcheroo candidates on the second leg. They're the cheap options that you could easily jump to if one of your double game week guys doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's where single game week players are going to have their best potential this week, is some of those late round switcheroos after you see a few of the scores. Thomas does bring up an interesting suggestion in chat. He talks about Toronto versus Montreal as a high scoring game this week. He said last year their only home loss in 2017, I guess 2 years ago, was against Montreal in this game, and that was a 5-3. So lots of potential goals, maybe Josie. So that could be one that people keep in mind if they are looking for some switcheroo ideas. Let's move on, though, to our keepers, defenders, and shutout opportunities. If you have questions, chat, start posting those now about keepers and defenders. Blayne, who do you like?
Go strictly with the double game week here. I like Sean Johnson for the price compared to the other double game week keepers. This is a double home, so that does work out favorably for him as well. So you're cashing in on that. I think your only other double home is Tyler Miller, and for the price and given the rest of the way LAFC stacks up, definitely not worth wasting 1 spot on the goalkeeper. I say that, and then I have Jordan Harvey on my defensive line, so I'm not using that 3rd spot for the attack, so Miller would be a good one for that. But I just like the offensive power Harvey brings, and I like his average that he's got. And then I went with a pair of San Jose defenders in Youngworth and Lima, just because I'm using the other spots elsewhere for some of the double game week teams, and thought San Jose's got a pretty good shout. That Vancouver game could be money for them, so going with it. And then cheap option for Otteroo, Switcheroo. I've got Kendall Waston on the bench. I think he's still playing. I don't watch much FC Cincinnati. Reid will correct me if he is still playing. But at 4-0, yeah. At 4-0, you can put him on the bench as one of your scrub spots that you would normally fill with a 4-0 player anyway, and have that option coming off the bench if you want it.
Mike?
So I kind of disagreed with Blayne. and I went with a little bit of New York Red Bulls defense. And the reason I did that is because DC United has really struggled to score. Um, we know that they have a long trip back from Vancouver this week. So I kind of like them as a decent shout at a clean sheet. And the bigger issue for me was that I wanted to make sure I had the offensive capabilities. So what I did is I have Robles in goal right now, in a keeperoo. I have Segura and Tinnerholm. Tinnerholm particularly is why I didn't go with Sean Johnson, because I wanted Tinnerholm's offensive capabilities. I'm sure we'll talk in a separate section about a rotation. I have Lawrence from the New York Red Bulls, and then in the kind of like a defender route is Mora from DC United. I know I've just trashed DC United, but he's 4.7, so decent, and I have enough money that I can throw someone else in if DC United goes really bad.
Who's your keeper?
I have Robles. I mean, I would throw someone else in, probably San Jose's keeper, Vega, if necessary.
I guess you will see that score. So you're going to do that after Robles' first game?
Yeah.
Very interesting. For some reason, I thought Tinnerholm was questionable.
Well, yeah. So I mean, people have been asking me about rotation, so I'll just talk. So Tinnerholm didn't play the last game. He had hamstring tightness. I'm assuming he'll be okay. Obviously, if not, you can change him around, and kind of free up some money that way. But I pretty much put him in because he's the most expensive defender, and he's the one I really want for the offensive capabilities. I think he'll be at home. I'm kind of thinking that they're doing more rotating with him, especially keeping him off the turf at Cincinnati. I think that's part of it. I feel like that's probably a game they felt like they could put Miller out there and not get burned too badly, and they were all right. And it's kind of what they've been doing. And just in general, it's Tinnerholm's gotten a lot of minutes, so that's why they brought in Miller, is to kind of let him get rotated. But I think for New York City, now you're playing 2 games against Eastern Conference foes. These are home games. They're must-win games if they want to catch Atlanta and pass them for that first bye. So I don't think the only rotation concern I have for New York City is up top, whether Hebert or Tati will get a bench. I think Morales plays both games. I would expect Ring to play both games, especially with Sands being out. You might see Ofori over Parks, but that's my Ring concern. It's because I'm assuming, unless Tinnerholm is genuinely hurt, I'm assuming that your rotation is going to happen up top at the 4.
Good advice. Yeah, no, that with the potential of Tinnerholm playing, that would impact my actual team at the end of the week. Check for lineups, everybody, because I was looking at between...
I should have said this. Tinnerholm went full in practice today.
Oh, good to know.
So was running great, looked great, according to the media people on the scene. I think Callens was also practicing as well. I don't think he played last week. So, yeah, I mean, from what we can... The best information we have, he's looking okay.
Yeah, I think you guys have some great suggestions right there. I currently have Johnson myself in my keeper spot. I was thinking about going with somebody budget. Vega's not a bad idea. Likely not going to do well against LA, but in that second game against Vancouver, banking on those points. Robles is sneaky. That's a sneaky one I can definitely appreciate. But I feel with that one is you're sort of going the other way. If Vega is, well, I'm going to write off the first game and hope for the second game, New York's is probably, I got a good shot at the first game, but Red Bulls is, I got a good shot at the first game, but maybe tougher in that second game. So maybe 1-1 either way you look at it.
And also, we haven't talked about, I think the team to really be concerned about rotation this week isn't New York City. I think it's actually, and I'll tell you why. That game against San Jose does not, they've already won essentially the Supporters' Shield. It's just a matter of when they're going to clean. That game against San Jose is not going to mean, the game that means something to them is the LA Galaxy, because that's the big game. And the knock against them is that they haven't won the big game, losing an RSL to the playoff, bowing out early in the Open Cup, and losing or drawing every game against the LA Galaxy. So, although Bob Bradley has shown in the past that he's generally more go try to win every game, it wouldn't totally surprise me if we see some rotation in that San Jose game. So doing Robles allows me to see that lineup, to
For
see
sure.
if Vela's on the bench or whatnot. Because I think that's the bigger issue this week for me. Because they don't care about the game. They only care about the LA Galaxy. So for me, all the stuff we said about all the games mattering, it doesn't matter for LAFC. So could I see Bob Bradley being choosy and making sure he beats his rival? Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. And that's like we were saying at the top of the show. That's where I'm looking at the wrong camera. I have too many things. Like we said at the top of the show, that's where a lot of these end of season rotations and playoff schedules start to come into play, and you can already see it right now in some of this advice that Mike is giving out. To round off, I thought it was interesting, Blayne, your San Jose options. I was looking at Tommy Thompson. Perhaps that's a budget thing. He is pretty expensive at 7.3. I have Segura right now. I think someone from LAFC on your defense is okay. I mean, you could definitely load up heavy with the offense, but I think you have some other offensive options. And so I think Segura he's a little bit cheaper of an option, but I've got some money left in my bank so I can upgrade if needed. And then I am actually putting Harrison Awful on my bench. I know I have Lawrence as well. I do like the Red Bulls. I was looking at the Columbus, and they have 2 away games, but with the home teams, I want a lot of the offensive players, and Awful has the offensive flair. He's going up against Cincinnati, which has been struggling some, and he's pretty cheap as well. So I like them with the shot of having, I like him with the shot of having 2 points. So I think that's another kind of a little budget guy you might consider as well. Going to chat real quick before moving on to our midfielders. Get my button. Let's see here. We're just talking about some of the same things. Sims getting his visa and Tinnerholm and everything. Just watch out for Tinnerholm's potential yellow card. So Awful has the offensive flair. No, I'll stop. Haha. No, Thomas, that's good. I appreciate those.
No,
those jokes.
Tinnerholm didn't have the yellow card. It was it's Sweat, Ring, Toddy, and Chanel.
Oh, that's my fault.
Mike,
yellow dot. My bad.
Yellow dot. Got it.
My bad. All right, let's move on to midfield. If you have any midfield questions, chat, please post them right now. Going to start out with Tarvin Odos from Reddit, who wanted to know who the best cheap Autoroo bench fodder, someone like Corey Baird was last week for this round. Let's just answer those during your questions, guy, or during your answers, guys. So, Mike, midfielders, who are you looking at?
I spent a lot of money on midfield this week. Pretty much I spent a lot of money up top. A lot of premium guys. Atuesta, I mean, he's been doing really good. I think he's averaging 7.5. And I mean, what he's been doing recently, he's pretty consistent at about that number. So I think he's probably, I don't know. Depending on which LAFC midfielder you go to, I think he's close to must own. You got to have a LAFC midfielder. Max Morales, unless he gets rotated, I think he's gold. He's on penalties, really consistent passer. Then I have Pedro Santos from the Crew. People in chat talking about him. I think he's a good option. And, plus he has a game against Cincinnati. So that's a good opportunity. And then I have Erickson. I'm not expecting a whole lot from the LAFC match, but he gets decent enough scoring that I don't think it'll be too bad. And then he'll have a good opportunity against Vancouver.
And do you have a cheap switcheroo option in midfield or just in general?
I just put E. Alvarez on my bench, but my strategy this week was I only have what I said earlier in defense with Mora and Robles just to kind of see if that goes. But otherwise, I'm just putting all my money into my starting team this week.
Sure. Blayne.
Yeah, so I kind of went the same way Mike did on some of this, and I actually sorted by double game week players, and I just basically went down the top of the list and selected add.
Lame.
So add to. Yeah, well, I wanted to sort for them, and it was Atuesta, Morales, and Pedro Santos were the top 3 on price. I did skip Christian Eriksen and went with Vaco instead. I know there was a question in chat about Vaco. I kind of prefer him versus Vancouver, and just think I like him this week. And then I went with Tchaikovsky for Red Bulls. Needed a little bit of Red Bulls coverage. He's been impressive these last few games, and I think at 8.1 he is worth a shout. That's kind of your value option. But if you want my real value option, Jackson Ewell for San Jose at 7.2 has been putting in some really good work. He's got a 4.6 average, which is great. And I don't know if you guys saw the highlight. If you haven't, go see his 60-yard assist this week. That perfect ball from basically inside his 18-yard box on up was fantastic. So any player who can do that at 7.2 is definitely worth a shout if you're looking for somebody cheaper.
Well, I will just have you know that I did not sort by double game week and the points and go down the list for making my picks. And the midfielders that I settled on were Atuesta, Maxi Morales, Vaco, and Pedro Santos. But I did not sort by that list. I will add, though, that if you're looking for a cheap switcheroo option, and this is why I put this question here, because I think I've got a good one at midfield. It is totally a punt, but you could probably make it work with the way the teams are lining up with your three positions. Like I said, totally a punt. The guy doesn't play a lot, but sorry, I lost my note. But you could go to Cincinnati and look at a com. He is super cheap. He got a goal last week. He doesn't get a lot of minutes, and that could be a pretty decent option coming off the bench, off your bench, because he'll probably come off Cincinnati's bench as well, with a double game week, with a rival, with the second hell is real. So a com could be a pretty potent switcheroo option this week. If you're looking at other options, I think this is why we're going to see a lot of similarity in... Oh, hello, Lily. I think you're going to see a lot of similarity in the double game week teams in midfield this week, because when you're going through there, yeah, you're looking at Maxi Morales. You might go with Ring, but Morales, I think, has the higher ceiling for your potential right there, so that's going to be a budget decision probably. Columbus is going to be on the road. Santos is the clear option there if you're looking for somebody else. Maybe it's Trapp. Maybe you're taking a flyer on Diaz. I think he's classified as a midfield there. But it's still just punts. You don't want anybody from DC. At best, they have some options who are budgety, but maybe off the bench, but they've just not been doing well at all. Red Bulls, Blayne has some good options for Red Bulls. I think they're filler. I think the Red Bulls are the players you're looking for this week since they're on the road. That I've got some money. I don't really like Columbus or someone. Maybe I'll just get a guy. Red Bulls are the kind of guys. Royer, those guys are the kind of people you'd look at. LAFC, it's Atuesta or K. That's who Mike was talking about. And Atuesta usually is the one who's on lots of those set pieces. And so for me, he still takes the number one right there. And then San Jose, it comes down to Eriksson or Vaco, pretty much. And I still like Vaco. He had I don't think he did anything last week. Got some bonus points with, I think, a 5. Before that, he had an assist. He kind of bounces around between 5, 9, 7 kind of points. He gets some good averages, and every now and then he just really goes off. And so I still like Vaco over Eriksson, but really either one of those players would be about on par. So that's the midfielder outlook as far as I see it. Anybody else is just to meet a budget or just a punt switcheroo.
Yeah, Reid, two comments on there. The K versus Atuesta debate. K is on yellow card warning, so if it's a budget thing, go with K. Otherwise, go with Atuesta, because that first yellow card in that first game would be terrible for you. And Shannon asked about Royer. Royer is definitely your number one midfielder from Red Bulls right now. It's kind of Royer, and then do you think Kaku's going to have a good game, or do you go with Tchaikovsky, who's had a little bit more consistent performance, but a little bit lower ceiling? But yeah, Royer is definitely your premium, or your most premium guy there if you're going to take one and you have the budget for it. I went with Tchaikovsky this week because I don't really have the budget for Royer and doing everything else I want to do. I wanted a little bit more expensive defense, but I could easily shift some money around and go with Royer.
So if Kaku's still here next year, Blayne, I think you got to talk to to Sporting Kansas City to get the Cauldron to, like, when they call his name out with the starting lineup, everybody just like flinch. I think that could be pretty funny. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
It'll be 2 years for that. For me, the issue, I actually had Royer in my lineup until I realized, oh, wait, Pedro Santos is going against Cincinnati, and then I switched to literally as this podcast was going on. Travis
is playing No Man's Sky, everybody. Sorry, that's Travis is playing No Man's Sky. I forgot to hit the push to talk
Oh.
button. Another one of our MLSFI emeritus guest hosts.
Gotcha. I thought you were signaling to me. I was trying.
No,
to
I'm like, Travis. He's playing. I forgot to turn off Steam. You can see my notifications.
All right. Well, anyway, I'll start over. I had Royer on my team because I wanted someone from the red. I did not go with Rachowski because if you look at the history, he has literally not played one of the double game week teams or one of the double game week. So like for example, week 11 he took the second game off against Dallas. Week 13 he took the first game off against Vancouver. Week 18 he took the first game off against. So even in week 20 he did play a little bit. He clearly came off the bench against Orlando and only played 36 minutes. So for me, he's not good enough to sacrifice, for some other double game week player. I think Royer did play more of those games, but that is an issue with the Red Bulls midfielders. So I think Royer is a better option for Rachowski for that purpose. But that's something to take and consider.
All right, let's move on to our forwards now. We have another Reddit question here from RWS723, who just mentions Brian Rodriguez, who is a new signing for LAFC, coming over to play, and wanted to know if we would see Brian Rodriguez. I believe he's coming in as a designated player, and I think we will. Probably in the Derby game. Maybe get a little bit during this first game just to kind of run around for the last 20 minutes or something. Maybe see him part of the Derby game, but I would in no way, shape, or form get him this week. I think he's $9 million as a forward. There's a better LAFC forward option this week that I hope we cover going forward. So, chat, if you've got questions for forwards, post them now, and let's start with you, Blayne.
I think the obvious one is Vela, but
What?
I've got Abear to go with him. Brian Rodriguez, I'll take on that challenge. No, I can't justify that this time around. Not when Diamande's at 8.9. He's got a little bit better proven record. And really, you're going to be looking at a guy like Rossi if you're going to be looking for the second forward. Blessing's now a midfielder after the spring-fall break, so that's really good. If I see Brian Rodriguez starting that first game, which if Mike is correct saying they will slough off that first game a little bit, that would be a good time to get him acclimated to the team. Don't expect him to start game 2, so I wouldn't consider him a double game week forward even if he starts game 1. He may get a cameo in El Tráfico, but I wouldn't count on him doing a whole lot. I would rather go with a guy like Blessing or a guy like Diamande and fill out the roster if you're going to take a third attacker behind Atuesta and Vela for this week, and go with somebody who's a little more proven. We've seen time and time again where mid-season acquisitions just don't quite acclimate the way you want to. I know chat had a question for a third striker this week. If I was going to go for a third striker in my lineup, it would probably be Zardes, and I'm keying off on that second game versus Cincinnati. I'm not very high on that pick, but that is one that I would look at. And the other one is Tati for New York City. If Abear and Tati both start that first game, I think it's a good chance to go ahead and grab both of them. But if I see either one of them benched, it's going to make that decision a whole lot tougher. But Vela and Abear are the only two I have in my lineup currently.
Mike?
So I too have Vela and Abear in my lineup currently. I think Abear has been a tremendous chance. He's a really consistent fantasy producer, and anyone watching this or listening to this podcast doesn't need me to talk about how good. The only things I'll mention is I think Rodriguez has been brought in more to replace Rossi rather than anything else. So I think if any fantasy impact is more on Rossi, if you were considering having 2 LAFC forwards. For me, Abear over Toddy, the yellow card issue is an issue. Rotation could upend that. But, Abear has been such a consistent producer. I think it's hard to turn him down this week. And he's still relatively cheap because he's had those games where he's been subbed on, which has kind of helped neutralize his value a little bit. So I think he's still pretty good.
10.4.
Plus he came in, yeah. Which, considering Vela is 14.5, it's like, 10, it's nothing. If I had to go for a third striker this week, it would be Wayne Rooney. Even as much as DC has struggled, he's still been very consistent. And so I think he could put up the bonus points and produce. Zardes has been a little bit more hit or miss to me, and he's not that much cheaper. So if I had the money and was going, I would go. To me, the midfielders are a much better option. You just have too many consistent mids this week who are much more likely to put up double digit.
I am shocked, frankly.
Reid, can I cut you off really quick for a question for chat?
Sure.
So, chat, I would never do this, but I'm curious who would. If Brian White for Red Bulls is seriously injured, I know he got stepped on, ankle roll, and had to come out of that game. Would you take Bradley Wright Phillips on the double game week?
Oh shoot, I missed that.
Sorry, you forgot that one, and I didn't even think about it. He got, one of the New England players followed through on his kick. I mean, he won the ball. There was no intent, no malicious effort to it. Just stepped on his ankle and rolled it pretty good, and he had to sub. Sorry, we missed that in the injury report.
Looks like that's a unanimous no for chat right there.
I would put him in as a switcheroo because that dude hates New York City. He loves scoring goals in New York City. He would terrify me if he's on the field. I hope he's off.
And 5.9.
5.9? Yeah. I mean, if you have money.
Wando's 6.9, and we're not talking about him for the second game versus Vancouver.
Yet you haven't let me go.
Uh-oh.
All right, go Reid.
I am going with Vela, Hebert, and Wando. Chris Wondolowski. He is my third forward right there on the bench. I think he's a great option. Scored last week. He's a little bit hit or miss. Has the record, though. I think surely he can get himself into some position and maybe get some bonus points. But Wando is my third forward option for this round.
So are you going with 3 forward?
I am going with 3 forwards, yep. I have Morales, Atuesta, Vaco, Pedro Santos, Hebert, Vela, Wando on the bench, and a pretty decent defense that I still have 1.3 in the bank.
So I think as you can kind of get this game this week is probably going to come down to your defense, because I mean most of the midfielders I think are pretty set forward. I mean we haven't given our captain pick.
I was going to say, and the reason it could be defense is because of the captains. Blayne, who do you want?
Oh, come on. Give me that Wando on the double game week. No, it's got to be Vela this week.
ACV, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's ACV, but let me throw out this, and Jack can answer it too. If Vela is on the bench in game, what do you do? Do you still captain Vela? Do you switch it to Atuesta?
For me, if Vela is on the bench for game 1, I would probably go with Maxi Morales, maybe Atuesta.
But you won't have seen that.
Yeah, I mean,
games of so that's because that's the situation
true.
We have. If LAFC does do it,
that's true.
All those other games.
I'm not thinking about that.
Blocked.
I would probably play it safe, go with Atuesta and grab the points.
See, for me, I'll just leave it on. Just screw it.
Give it to him.
He comes in, he'll be. Because otherwise, it's best or a San Jose player for a double game week or a single week. Vela will probably come in and score a brace anyway.
Right. You leave it on Vela and then watch Chris Wondolowski get a double hat trick this week. That's what happens. Because MLS. That's right. Because
MLS. No, obviously because MLS this week is DC United.
Right, there it is. Right, there it is.
Getting a hat trick against New York, because that's what chat said. Darn you, chat.
For sure, Patrick. I would leave it for El Trafico. That's huge. All right, guys, that's all that we have for the show tonight. I am also on Vela, clearly, as my captain. We'll hang around for a few minutes after to talk with chat, so be sure to join us next week if you want to get involved in chat, if you're listening to us right now. Any plugs as we close out? Blayne?
Nothing from me this week.
Mike?
You can at injury incidents at MLS Injury News, so I don't have to find out during the podcast.
There we go.
Sorry, Mike.
You better have Lily bring me an Oreo for that.
That's right, all the way to do that,
Wake up.
Oreos.
Bring me an Oreo right now.
And of course, for myself, you can catch everything at MLSFantasyBoss.com. Check out the articles that we have over there. It's pretty good stuff. And you can also subscribe to my weekly MLS Fantasy newsletter delivered straight to your inbox. So I guess I'm one of the idiots at MLS who sends out advice. But you can subscribe to that at just search for newsletters MLS on Google, and you'll find that. And also, please be sure to check out r/fantasy MLS, the Reddit subreddit group, which is an amazing place, and the Discord chat for MLSFantasyBoss.com. There's a lot of fantastic people right there. Older Goaler has done a great job keeping that community robust, as well as the regulars who are in there just to hang out and talk all sorts of stuff. So thank you so much for listening, everyone, this week, and good luck. All right, that's it. Chat. Let's see what other kinds of questions you guys have as we're wrapping this show up. At the Wester from Desperate. Yeah, with that captain question, I'm still on Villa all the way. Mavinga and his family were in an accident. Oh no, what happened?
Yeah, Christian, how serious? I mean, that always sucks to hear when an MLS player, anybody gets in an accident, but what do you have any more detail?
We'll wait and see if he posts.
Please for speeding lovers, don't race in town to not endangering.
Random aside, because Mike asked this question a little bit ago, and I don't know if anybody was here. If we, for some reason, did a Star Wars book club podcast where we basically would say, hey, read the first chapter or 5 chapters of this book, we're going to come on and talk about it and have chat and do things. Is that something you all might be interested in? And maybe the answer is no, because you guys are probably here for fantasy soccer and not Star Wars.
Boo. People here for Star Wars.
Sign me up for the book club if you guys do it. I need to read the books anyway, and if you're going to do a weekly assignment, that will make me get off my ass and read the book.
That could be fun.
Speaking of Star Wars, did y'all notice the change in the back?
I did. I was going to mention that. That's a little cute thing you have back there.
Yeah. I got the Star Wars poster, and I got my Funkos. Or some of them.
That's very nice. Very nice.
Mike, when are you going to get one of those villainous Ravensburger puzzles put together and glued up for your...
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen them.
I haven't been to Target because it's like an hour away, but they were never available on the website, and I can usually get that stuff on the website.
Mm-hmm.
The closest Target's about 45 minutes from me, and I found 4 of them. Did not buy them, but I found 4 different ones when I was there.
Yeah, because I mentioned it to my wife. She's like, well, I would mostly be buying them, and I think I'll get the extra pieces anyway, because we're probably going to have to buy a second edition of the game because we've been wearing out the cards, letting the kids play with them too much.
Sleeve your cards, Mike. Sleeve your cards.
That's right.
I don't have time to sleeve all my cards.
Hey, that foam core board I've been building. So for chat, you guys hear us talk about villains all the time. I'm building a foam core board storage system for my game, and it's big enough for sleeved cards. Very important.
Reid, you sent us that picture. That looks amazing.
I did.
I have slacked off of my foam core lately because I've been painting miniatures. I mean, we can just turn this into complete board game geek night if we need to.
There is a miniatures that I follow. Let's see here. Oh, we got some questions. Jojo, were you guys talking about Castellanos for New York City?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a decent option, but he's on yellow card warning and probably a little bit below A-Bear. I mean, he's one of those. He would be a really interesting option if we had 4 choices for each team. But since we're only limited to 3, Maxi's got to be in one of those spots. A-Bear's probably above Tati. Even with Tati being good, A-Bear's just much more. So then it's like, do you do Tati or do you do or Johnson or someone else from New York City defense? And to me, it's got to be the defender because you only don't have too many double home players because you can't double up on LAFC defenders and you don't want to double up on New York City defenders. So you got to have at least one New York City defender and one defender.
Yeah, Jojo, that's you got caught off. We don't use the last name on him because it's too hard to pronounce. We call him Tati because that's what he goes by. first name and everything. So yeah, you may have heard us call him Tati. If you listen to the podcast again, that's who we're referring to. We have a bad habit of that sometimes, and we sometimes mispronounce names like Heel should be Gil, or we pronounce Heel as Gil because people don't understand who we're talking about when we say Heel, so we have to call him by how we think it.
That's a very interesting point because I know we get called out from time to time for mispronouncing names, but I do often wonder if someone who's not necessarily as familiar with all the players is looking at Carlos Heel and he thinks, oh yeah, Carlos Gil, that's the guy who I want, and if that does help some people who would not know otherwise. I tell you what, I'm dabbling in fantasy Bundesliga this season, and when I'm listening to some podcasts and I'm trying to follow these names, I'm like, what did they just say? And I even had a semester of German, and I'm like, I kind of know what you just said, but what in the world's going on?
All right, two things from Patrick. First of all, having a 10-month-old is no excuse for not reading. I have a 6-month-old and then 3, so you can do some reading.
Book on
just
tape.
get it on your iPad. Like, you go to the library, book versions. You'll be fine. Second thing, why is Tarek not starting? It's because he played for Orlando City in his trash. So that should make you happy, Patrick, because I know that you're feeling particularly warm and fuzzy towards the player this week.
Patrick, there is an easy solution with a 10-month-old. My sister actually showed it to me with her son. Read the book to your kid. Kids need to be read to all the time. Just pick up the book and read to your kid. That counts as reading a book to your kid, and you're helping their vocabulary. Plus, you're getting a little bit of Star Wars time in for you at the same time. Everybody.
Though that's a good point. We could do some children's book times for people with kids, and we could just talk about some fun times with children's books.
For the record, Little Golden Books has a Star Wars book for every episode, and then some offshoots from there. I think they're up to about 20 of the Little Golden Book titles for Star Wars. So, I mean, we could definitely make a children's Star Wars book podcast if we needed to.
This could work. We may just
the Lego book for episode 3. So it's a Lego telling of Revenge of the... It's like Anakin was mean to the young instead of the big kill. They're just all these little changes. Oh, fair, you're mean. And my son Peter loves them. Patrick loves Orlando. Okay. Joseph Martinez. I mean, yeah, he's a good single game week option, but he's super expensive, and you have at least 2 really solid double game week options. I would have a hard time justifying getting him in there. Like I said, there's just too many good double game. I mean, if we were playing a game like, I don't know, The Show, I might be considering playing Joseph Martinez in that, where you had just single game week options. I'm just saying.
All right, well, thanks so much, everyone, for coming out tonight. I am super stoked that the streaming quality was 10,000 times better. We're going to keep doing this for the rest of the season, and who knows, maybe we'll stop doing soccer and start doing Star Wars after that. We'll see what happens. But thanks for coming out. If you have any questions, be sure to send them to us on Twitter before the week starts. And again, good luck and thanks.